And the way we do it at our house, in our family Bible study, is we split it up. We might read like 10, 15, kind of whatever you feel like. So I don't want to put that on any one person. Do we have multiple people that would like to read this morning?
Yes.
All right. And we're going to be in Numbers 22. Numbers 22.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any others? All right. So, you'd like to? Okay. So we'll split this up when we get there. I want to set a bit of context first. We're in this section of Numbers, and I think of it as starting in chapter 19 and going through the story we have this morning, which is Balaam. And we're in this period where the Israelites have been in the wilderness for 40 years. All of those from the initial Exodus are dead, we're told, except for, I think, Moses and Joshua and Caleb. And actually, I guess when we start, there's still Miriam and Aaron. But of course, as you found out last week, they're going to pass. But we're in this period. They've been wandering the wilderness for 40 years. They've been provided for by God. They've had manna from heaven. They've had water this whole time until that's going to become an issue again in this part. They've had their three leaders, Miriam and Moses and Aaron, with them this whole time. And they've gotten the law. They've been practicing the law. They've been moving the tabernacle around. They've been doing the sacrifices. And then we have these instructions for the red heifer. And I wish we had more time to go into it. But the red heifer is like, you think you've got all this figured out about what's clean, what's unclean, how these ceremonies work. And then the red heifer just takes it all and flips it on its head and says, no, you have no idea what's going on here. And in fact, the sages have this interesting saying. They use Solomon, and they say, when Solomon read the Old Testament, and he read the law, and he read all these things about the sacrifices and how the tabernacle is made, and cleanness and uncleanness, he understood it all. He understood the purpose behind all of it. But when he came to the cleansing water made from the red heifer, Solomon said, I have no idea what this means. What is this? And then he said, if I don't understand this, do I actually understand any of this that I thought I understood? And then we're going to go into this time of great turmoil because their three leaders that they've been with the whole time, two of them are going to die, Miriam and Aaron. And then they're going to go to war. That's really what chapter 21 is all about. Also, it has the when they're bitten by the fiery serpents in 21. So they get these instructions that are like, if they thought they were starting to understand what it meant to be a kingdom of priests, a royal priesthood, suddenly God's like, nah, you don't get it. And then two of their three leaders pass away. And then as they start to go, they're making their way into the promised land. They're seeking passage from Edom. Edom's like, no. And so they're going around this convoluted route to try to get into Israel. And they're facing opposition all of the way. And then along the way, oh yeah, there's fiery serpents. Let's add to that. And then that really brings us up to chapter 22. And I say let's just start reading it first. So John, you read as far as you want. We've got 41 verses, three of us, so read as far as you'd like.
I'll take you to 20. How's that sound?
Okay.
Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw that all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, this horde is going to lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field. So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at the time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pether near the Euphrates River in his native land Balak said, a people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. Perhaps then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land, for I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed. The elders of Moab and Midian left, taking with them a fee for divination. When they came to Balaam, they told him what Balak had said. Spend the night here, Balaam said to them, and I will report back to you with the answer the Lord gives me. So the Moabite officials stayed with him. God said to Balaam and asked, who are these men with you? Balaam said to God, Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. A people that has come out of Egypt covers the face of the land. Now come put a curse on them for me. Perhaps then I will be able to fight them and drive them away. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people, because they are blessed. The next morning Balaam got up and said to Balak's officials, go back to your own country. The Lord has refused to let me go with you. So the Moabite officials returned to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Then Balak sent other officials, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said, this is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me. But Balaam answered them, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now spend the night here so I can find out what else the Lord will tell me. That night God sent Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you.
All right, well.
Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, it turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat it to get it back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path through the vineyards with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat the donkey again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No, he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you, because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it.
Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now if you are displeased, I will go back. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with Balak's officials. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the Moabite town on the Arnon border at the edge of his territory. And Balak said to Balaam, did I not send you an urgent summons? Why didn't you come to me? Am I really not able to reward you? Well, I have come to you now, Balaam replied, but I can't say whatever I please. I must speak only what God puts in my mouth. When Balaam went with Balak to Kiriath-Huzoth, Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep and gave some to Balaam and the officials who were with him. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamoth Baal, and from there he could see the outskirts of the Israelite camp. All right, we're going to take our normal thing. Normally I ask you what questions you have, what you see. I'm going to flip that around this week, and I've got a question for you. I'm going to give you some hints first, because this story has got heavy parallels to another story that we've already read. And so I want you to think about that. I'm going to give you some of the elements, and then at the end, I'll just have like everyone shout out at once what their answer is. So we have this reminder of the prophecy, you might say, or the promise to Abraham that whoever curses you will be cursed, and whoever blesses you will be blessed. And we have this kind of similar thing about Balaam. We have a reminder about that. We have this scenario set up where maybe Israel is going to be cursed, and maybe they're going to be destroyed because they're going to be cursed. We have Balaam, we have someone getting on a donkey and going on this trip with two, this is important, with two servants he brings along with him. And then we have the angel of the Lord with a sword guarding a path. Okay? So with those elements there, and when I get to the count of three, everybody just shout out the story that you think that this is parallel. All right, so 1, 2, 3.
Not sure.
3.
Garden of Eden?
Wow, yeah, it really sounds like the Garden of Eden, doesn't it? We've got an angel with a sword guarding a path. Anybody have anything else that they had in mind? Is there a story where somebody gets on a donkey and takes two servants with them, and then it's possible that Israel is going to be destroyed?
That Abraham and Isaac?
It's Abraham and Isaac. And so it turns out that they are two, and the further you dig with both of these, it's not just those things. You will find more and more and more parallels to both of these stories. Now, isn't that interesting? I want to tell you this thing that the sages say about the story, really that they're saying about Balaam. And they say those who are generous and humble, these are the disciples of Abraham. But those who are stingy and those who have a big ego, these are the disciples of Balaam. All right, so we're going to set up this contrast. Generous versus stingy. Abraham's generous, Balaam stingy. Humble. Abraham's humble versus big ego with Balaam. And I want you to just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we work through this. Now the thing is, we could go through this story and we could look at it as a parallel with the Garden of Eden, because it is. And there are deep lessons that we could get out of that. We could also go through this and look at it as a parallel with the binding of Isaac, or what the Jews call the Akedah. And we would get deep lessons out of that as well. We could also look at this, I think, in the arc that's coming along here in the story, because this whole section is just fascinating. What's going on, what God is doing here. And I think we could get different messages out of that by looking at where it sits and what's around it. And now, so the question I have to you is, which one of those is right? Which one of those is what the Bible's actually trying to say? Which do you think? Is it the Garden of Eden, or is it the Akedah, or is it the story arc that's going on here? Which one of these is the Bible actually? What is God trying to tell you?
Probably all of it.
All of them. Of course it's all of them. If we can go through and see these parallels, and just trust me on this, that it's not just the angel with the sword. There's the language that's used. There's a ton of things that tie this back to the Garden of Eden. If that is crystal clear, and if it's also crystal clear that this is a parallel to the binding of Isaac because it is crystal clear. We could go through and look at so many things. Clearly, God is doing both of those, right? I mean, it's not an accident. And so this, I think it creates a bit of a problem for us because we tend to look at the Bible in this way that, well, there's an interpretation and there's a correct interpretation, and we like to debate. Maybe debate's wrong. Fight something about which one of these interpretations is the correct interpretation. But we're seeing here that, now wait a minute, there are clearly at least two different ways to look at this story. And there are lessons that God is giving us about these two stories. And I like the way that ties in with what the sages say. Because we could approach this in a way that we're stingy, like there's only one interpretation to go around, all right? And with an ego, and I've got it, and you don't. Or we could look at this as an interpretation of being generous, which is that God's got multiple things to say. And I want to hear out what you have to say about that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all interpretations are right. I'm not saying that you can go and just pluck any theory about what this thing means or pluck any story and say it's like that story. No, you have to bring your evidence. Like, we can go through and we can see how this is a parallel to the Garden of Eden. We can see how this is a parallel to the binding of Isaac. It's very clear. If you want to bring an interpretation, you got to bring your evidence along with it. You got to explain why God is saying this in the story. It's not just any interpretation, but there are multiple of them. And it leads us to be generous and humble, to set our ego aside about I'm right or wrong about this. One of the elements, I don't think I said this either, we got a talking animal in this. It's like the elephant in the room, the talking donkey in the room, right? We started in the Garden of Eden, we had a talking snake. And sort of, I don't want to, maybe pet peeve is wrong, maybe it is a pet peeve with me, is that people read the story and they're like, well, the talking snake is Satan. It's obviously Satan. And I'm like, why? Where are you getting this from? Because up until this point, we have had zero evidence whatsoever that talking snake is Satan. And actually, the evidence that we have got, because snakes are going to show up in the story again, right? Where do they show up next? Moses takes a staff, throws it down, becomes a snake, right? And so if the snake is Satan, then God has asked Moses to throw down his staff. It turned into Satan, and then God's like, go pick it back up. Grab it by the tail, pick it up. I'm like, I don't know. And then we've just had this story where snakes have showed up again. The fiery serpents are biting the Israelites. Oh, that could be Satan. And then God says, make a form of this snake, put it up on a pole, and if you look at it, you'll live and not die by the snake. So put Satan up on a pole, and if y'all look at Satan, then you'll live and not die by the snakes. No. Now we have what is, by the way, the only other talking animal in Torah. There are two talking animals. There's the snake in the Garden of Eden, and there's this donkey here. And as you read this story, this donkey does not look like Satan at all, whatsoever. Could you get any parallels between snake? So it's kind of a pet peeve for me. But I am also called by this to be generous and humble, and I'm still on the fence about whether that snake being Satan is a valid interpretation. I have yet to hear evidence that there's any reason to think it's a valid interpretation, but I'm open to it. And maybe the evidence is much later, and we'll get to it 2 years from now. Maybe we will. But I'm called to keep the humble and generous mindset that, well, maybe it is. Maybe God is also saying that in that story. But you're going to have to convince me. So anyway, how do we deal with this story? If we could look at this as, well, let's read it and try to parallel it to the binding of Isaac. Let's read it and try to parallel it to the Garden of Eden. Or let's try to get it in its context and look at it in this ark. This is what me and John are dealing with. trying to figure out how to teach this. Because it is all of those things. This story is so incredible. We could spend months, I don't know, maybe years, just digging into this story and seeing what God has put there for us. And what I want out of this is to create that thirst in you, to create a love for the Scripture where you want to do that, where you want to see it, where you want to wrestle with it.
Last week, I could have done two separately equal on Abraham's, death or leading up, and I chose one, and I could have done another and pulled a lot of different points out of it. But it is amazing when we start to look at how deep it is.
Yes, absolutely. And if we were geniuses, we would come up with a way that we would teach it and it would all fit together and it would all make sense. But newsflash, we are not geniuses. We are, and I also feel like we're at a turning point just like the Israelites were, because we've been following a map up until this point. We've pretty much been following what Balaam has done. We've diverted from that a little bit. We're kind of doing our own thing. But we have reached this point where there's not really a map to follow. I mean, there is, but Balaam keeps going, but we're not going to follow it. And it's sort of like we've had this map, and now we're over in the part, where it's just sort of like gray, and it just says, "Here be dragons." That's where we are. And you all get to come along with us. It'll be a fun ride, I hope. So let's start with this. There is a surface reading of this story that when I first heard it blew my mind. And let's just get that out of the way, because something happens here. It starts in verse 20. So our story is Balak is going to go hire this mercenary prophet, let's call him. And by the way, he lives, I think it's like a 2-week journey away from this area. He lives a long ways away. They are trying to summon this guy from forever away. And, he goes and they take with him the fee for divination. So, we're trying to buy this guy. That's Balak's idea. Let's buy this guy's curse of Israel. And he's like, no, it doesn't work that way. I can't just say whatever I want. I can only say what God says. And so he listens to God, and God says, no, you can't go with him. You can't curse Israel because Israel is blessed. How can you curse a people who are blessed? You can't do that, Balaam. So he sends them back, and then they come again with more stuff and more officials. And so Balaam says, well, let me go listen to God again. I told you all the first time I couldn't do this, but let me go see what God says. Okay? And then that night, this is verse 20, then that night God came to Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you. And then verse 21 and 22 say, Balaam got up in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went. This is our problem. Wait a minute. God just told him to go. Why is God angry that he went? And it's like a riddle. We've had tests that were riddles. And we shouldn't jump to conclusions about what this is. The point is you got to sit with this. And what happens is I think it's 8 chapters. I'm pretty sure it's in chapter 30 of Numbers. It's finally going to tell us, because what happens right after this is the Moabite women are going to come and entice the Israelites into sin. And then, that's in chapter 25. And then later it's going to tell us Balaam told Balak to do that. And so it's like, Balaam's like, I can't curse them. I can only say what God says. But if you want to get them, I know how to get them. If you cause them to sin, send your women over, the pretty ones. Entice them into, not only just taking the women, but in this ceremony where you're celebrating Baal. We're celebrating the false gods. If you do that, they're going to be in trouble. And that's exactly what happens. Till one of the guys comes along, sticks a spear through two of them, right? And then that's the story in 25. That's the surface reading of this. And it's something I'd never heard until not too long ago. And it's mind-blowing that that's what's going on here. I'm going to do this. Boy, I'm hesitant to do this. We got two parallels. I want y'all to pick one. Ooh, scary. Yeah. Show of hands. Who wants to look at this through the lens of the Garden of Eden? And then the other will be the lens through the binding of Isaac. Who wants to look at this through the lens of the Garden of Eden? Hands, anyone? Okay. Who wants to look at this through the lens of the binding of Isaac?
There's some here that are wanting you to choose, obviously.
Well, maybe, yeah, we didn't get all the votes, but the Garden of Eden has it. Okay, so we don't have time to read it verse by verse, looking at it that way. So here's what we're going to do. What is the Garden of Eden about? I'll just remind you of this story. So, the story was about nakedness, wasn't it? It was that word kept showing up again and again and again. And we struggled with, well, what does the tree of knowledge of good and evil mean? Because if they did not have any knowledge of good and evil, how can God punish them from eating from the tree if they don't know whether it's right or wrong? So it seems to be in this knowledge, a specific kind of knowledge. And we get a clue of what that is. It's not a clue, like it just tells you, like they eat of the tree and they realize that they're naked. And then the next thing that happens is they have a baby. And so they're not aware of their sexuality. They're not aware that they can create children, that they can create other people who are made in the image of God, apparently. And that's part of what that story is about. And we contrast the snake with them. They're made in the image of God. The snake is not. What does that mean? And the story is trying to tell us. This snake, he looks like a human. He walks, he talks, he reasons. But he has this idea that I follow the instincts that God put inside of me. I'm a snake. I slither around, I smell the mouse, I go eat the mouse. That's how God made me, and that's what I do. And he cannot fathom that God has put this tree here with this fruit that looks good to eat, that is desirable to gain the knowledge of good and evil, and that you shouldn't eat it. Like the snake just can't comprehend that. Because all of God's creatures that he made them with the instincts to do what God made them to do. But then he made humans, and he gave them instincts, but he also said, I want you to do what I tell you to do. Not just what you want to do, but what I tell you to do. As I'm saying that, man, isn't that what this story is about? What does Balaam want to do? Man, I'd really like to go down there and put a curse on them and get a house full. It's the words that come out of his mouth. He's like, I can't take your gold and silver, but man, a house full of gold and silver? Whew, that'd be nice. He's imagining it, right? As Rabbi David Foreman says, it's a little too specific what he says there. It's like he's thought about this and said, boy, I really like that, but I can't. I can only do what God says to do. But he's still got a problem, right? He's not... He's struggling, right? Okay, so let's go back to the Garden of Eden. It's really about, are you going to listen to God, or are you going to do what you want to do? There's also this element of trust. Are you going to trust God in the Garden of Eden? I'm giving you everything that you need. You walk with me in the cool of the day. You go and pick your fruit right off the tree, whatever you want to eat. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to toil. But the snake comes along and he puts doubt in their minds. All right? Oh, God, I don't know if you can trust God. I think he just doesn't want you to have this knowledge. He doesn't want you to be like him. He doesn't want you to have this knowledge. Are you going to trust God? Or why don't you trust me? And it turns out the donkey in our story is also going to talk about trust. Because we're going to have the three incidents. And by the way, it's like a cone that's going down. It's like first the angel's standing there and the donkey can just go off in the field. Right? It's a road going down a field. The donkey can just go around him. But we're going to get in narrower and narrower places where the angel is going to stand until there's nowhere to turn either to the right or to the left. We got to make a decision. Are we going to go forward or are we going to go back? And so the donkey just sits down. And Balaam beats him for the third time. And then finally the donkey is going to talk. And it's very interesting what the donkey says. Let's just read it. Verse 28. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? It's kind of about trust, right? Why are you beating me? And Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. Do we see why the sages say it's got an ego? Abraham is humble. If I only had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. That's interesting. The angel's got a sword and it's going to kill him. But he said, if I had a sword, I'd kill you. And the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? Haven't I been a trustworthy donkey? Like, you've been riding me for, I don't know, years and years and years. I've always went wherever you told me to go. Haven't I built up enough trust? Can't you trust me? And now this one little thing happens, and now you don't trust me anymore? Garden of Eden story is about trust. Isn't this overarching story of the Israelites also about trust? They've been wandering around the desert for 40 years. And it says, I said they had food and they had water. It also says, didn't your sandals not wear out? Didn't your clothes not wear out? Haven't you been getting exactly what you need from God? And then suddenly they're not going to trust him. Again, what happens with them not trusting? Because you read the story that you had last week, right? And it's like, oh, there's those Israelites. They're complaining about food again. But it's not just food. It's specifically grapes and pomegranates. It's the things from the land where they're going. But then in the very next chapter, we're back to the exact same things in the test. We had water, and we don't like this detestable food. They're back to complaining about the manna again. Manna again. We had manna yesterday, and the day before, manna again. They're back to those same things. But they're having trouble trusting God is what they're having trouble with. That's why the serpents are going to come, because they don't trust God. Isn't that exactly what the Garden of Eden is? Is that exactly what the snake is doing? He's saying, no, don't trust God. Listen to me. And then they get punished with snakes. And it seems like God is telling them, put the snake up on a pole. Remember the story I told you. Remember, you got to trust me and not the voice of the snake that tells you to follow your desires. If you do that, if you can remember that, then you will live. Then things will go well with you. If you trust me on this journey into the promised land, things will go well. If you don't, not going to go well. All right, comments. I didn't leave a lot of time for comments, questions. What questions that you all have? Things that you see. We are quiet. Oh, we got one. No, my brother's here.
Yeah.
There's some.
I was going to say, number one, in both instances, there is no amazement or it's just everyday, hey, this is animal talking to me. There's no surprise, no normal everyday occurrence.
Exactly. I love that about the story. In the first one, it's not so apparent, right? Like, and you can kind of get like, well, the world's just been made. So Eve's talking to a snake, like, maybe they talk. You know, we're trying to figure that out. But here, at this point, like that hits you like a ton of bricks. When the donkey talks to Balaam, the donkey says, why are you beating me? And Balaam just starts talking to him like he's a kid. Because you're not listening to me. And what's fascinating to me is he has this argument with this donkey. You know, like they're arguing back and forth. And the donkey only says two things. Like the first is a question, why are you beating me? And then the second is like, well, I've always went where you went before. Can't you see something's going on? And then the argument's over and Balaam has lost. He's lost this argument to the talking donkey. You know, it doesn't even, it's hilarious. It's a beautiful story just on the surface of it, that way. But it is so deep as well. Yeah.
You got another tree in the garden. If that snake was so smart, why didn't he do that one first?
Ooh, that is a deep mystery that I'm going to invite you to wrestle with this week. But this is what I want you to do. I want you to be so thirsty and so fascinated by this that the whole week you're going through and you're like, well, what's going on with these two stories? What is God calling us to what is he trying to teach us by crafting it this way? And dig deeper. Read the first story. Read the Garden of Eden. Read this Balaam story. See the parallels. Wrestle with what God is trying to tell us. That's what we want to do here. That's what we want to do. Yeah.
I was going to go back to the second one, which you actually mentioned, but it was like, okay, God said, all right, go ahead and go, but as immediately, as quick as he left, he's mad at him.
He's mad at him.
And that, but if you read, like you brought out the context afterwards, it was Balaam's mindset from the difference of, oh, well, I'm going to do what God says, but I'm going to put my own little twist to it. So that technically, I'm not, but we don't know that at this point.
We don't know at this point. The fascinating thing is, if you read this as a parallel to the Garden of Eden, and you read it as a parallel to the binding of Isaac, you will come to different conclusions about what's going on there. That's what blows my mind about this. It's a different story. It's a different story when looked at in one light as it is in the other, with different lessons. And the story has this mystery, which I think it solves later. But it's also like, I'm telling you, if you look at it the two different ways, it's a different story, and you will come to a different conclusion about what's going on there. I'll leave you with this thing, because we'll go. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one more, but that goes also to the same thing. The donkey seeing the angel that's the threat to Balaam that he does not see.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fascinating thing. I'm going to leave you with this one thing. Something else the sages get from this is that why does God, let's ask the question, why does God tell him to go the second time? Because he's already told him not to go. It's clear that he doesn't want him to go, right? Or we would think that. Well, why does he tell him to go? And the sages say that God will take you where you want to go. Whether it's the right place or not, God will take you there. If you're really trying to get there, even if it's the wrong place, God will let you go there. But, which blows my mind, but he's going to take Balaam there, and then he's taking him there to teach him something. Balaam has got a lesson to learn, and we've got a lesson to learn along with Balaam. That's what this story is about. So God lets him go because he really, really, really wants to go. God's like, okay, you go. That shows me there's something I need to teach you. If you really want to go, there's a lesson to be learned. That's tough.